Benghazi terror attack is certainly to be a main focus at Monday's foreign policy debate in Boca. And joining me now, former U.S. Ambassador and Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, Nicholas Burns. Thanks so much, Nick. There have been conflicting reports, and now we are told that, first of all, the CIA knew in real time that this was a terror attack, but there were other reports from the street saying, well, maybe it was related to the video, and that the intelligence bureaucracy that was created post 9/11, the National Intelligence Chief, the NDI, knew pretty much on the Saturday night before Susan Rice went out for the administration to speak much more ambiguously on Sunday morning. How is that possible that she was not properly briefed by the intelligence community before she went on Sunday television?
Well, you know, Andrew, it's not possible for me to know what happened inside the administration. But I'll tell you this: as you know, I served in both Democratic and Republican administrations. I served in 5 embassies and consulates in my career, and you know, it's credible and believable to me that in a crisis like this, you do get conflicting reports. And the administration believed in the first few days after the attack on Benghazi that there had been one cause of it, and then as more information came in and they sifted through it, they came to another explanation. To me, that doesn't amount to misleading the American public. I don't think that the President or Secretary Clinton or Ambassador Rice would ever do that. They're all honorable people and honest people. And I really think they try to do their best in this very difficult conflict. And I guess I find, Andrea, this rush to judgment during a presidential campaign, I find it to be troubling, and I find it to be very distasteful, because we ought to be focusing on 2 key issues. What happened that night? What caused the breakdown in security? And there's been a review panel put together by Secretary Clinton appropriately to look at that. And secondly, how do we prevent these attacks from occurring in the future? How do we keep our diplomats safe? That's what we ought to be talking about, rather than making this a partisan football, in my judgment.
But at the same time, the president has the challenge by Monday at this foreign policy debate to have a real narrative and to have an explanation. He won't have time to wait for that review board.
Well, you know, it's really important that this review board, led by a very distinguished former ambassador, Tom Pickering, be given the time it needs to do its job, and that politics doesn't intrude there. I would also say, Andrea, certainly the president's going to have to answer this question directly on Monday night. Of course, everyone would expect that. But I think it's unwise and a little bit risky for the Romney campaign to make this accusation, because Governor Romney acted on that very night. He issued a statement that was, in hindsight, very unwise itself. He didn't get his facts straight in the second debate. And, you know, the Republicans were part of the group in Congress that cut funding for embassy security. So, as a former diplomat, I hate to see this become political. I really think we ought to focus on the key issue there, and that is, how do we keep our people safe going forward?
The president was on the Jon Stewart program, and Jon Stewart asked a question about Benghazi, saying, is it optimal for something like this to happen? And the president took those words and incorporated, you know, it's never optimal when you lose 4 people. Now there's at least one report that the Daily Mail in the UK has interviewed Ambassador Stephen's mother, and that she's very distressed by this. Do presidents and commanders-in-chief have to figure out the appropriate language, or is that also nitpicking?
You know, gosh, I guess I try not to be overly judgmental. I can imagine the pressure that all of our senior officials are under, and there's no question, having watched President Obama in the days after the attack, he led with strength. He led with dignity as he had to officiate over the very difficult ceremony over the return of our 4 diplomats from Benghazi, and I think that he's been a dignified presence throughout this. And again, Andrea, I guess I'd just say, and I've worked for both political parties in government, both Republican and Democratic administrations. I really don't think we should insist on politicizing this. And there's just too much at stake for the United States in these Arab revolutions, and we've got to find a way to protect our diplomats. I would hope that the Democratic and Republican parties could combine in Congress to get full funding for security, to improve security for our embassies and consulates. That's the most important thing. And of course, we've got to go after, the U.S. government has to go after the people who murdered our diplomats, and the Obama administration has said it will do that, and that ought to be a focus as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Nick Burns.
Thank you.